expresses the sense of the Senate that the United States must not bar individuals from entering into the United States based on their religion, as such action would be contrary to the fundamental principles on which this nation was founded. It simply expresses the sense of the Senate that our great country shouldn't bar individuals from entering the United States based on their religion. I know many on this committee on both sides of the aisle have rightfully expressed their outrage about the call earlier this week to shut our borders to Muslims. Now, let's just go on record as formally rejecting this reprehensible proposition. We've heard from FBI Director Comey that ISIL's narrative, part of it is that the United States is anti-Muslim. They use that to in recruiting. Department of Defense has told us the same thing. I think we ought to listen to what our national security leaders and send a clear and direct message that America welcomes people from all countries and all faiths. Our strength comes from our commitment to the principles of freedom, equality, and liberty. We've had a couple lapses in the past when we've talked about excluding people in this country because of their religion. We want to make it very clear that is not what the United States does, and that we welcome people of all religions. So a simple sense of the Senate, in fact, it says, I can read it, it's very short, is a sense of the Senate that the United States must not bar individuals from entering into the United States based on their religion, as such action would be contrary to the fundamental principles on which this nation was founded. I mean, it doesn't stop us from saying if somebody's got a criminal background or has been fought against the United States, something like that. Of course, we can keep them out, but we can't do it solely on religion.
I think at this point I would call on Senator Sessions because he would like to offer something to this.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Senator Leahy's resolution. I believe he means well, and all of us are committed to religious freedom in America and to promote it wherever we can around the world. But with regard to immigration, it is our responsibility to protect the rights and well-being first of American citizens. We are a secular nation state, not a theocracy. A great deal of, it would be important, I think, that we express some of our interest in seeing how immigration is impacting Americans in their wages and their salaries and their national security and recent immigrants to our country through some of the policies that are being adopted by our country. It was just 5 months ago that Kate Steinle died in her father's arms on a pier in San Francisco because of a repeatedly deported criminal alien set free. What about American workers at Disney forced to train their replacements? They claimed they were discriminated against because they were Americans. Does this bill help them? We've not done anything on these issues. We have these fights over and over, but we never seem to advance a proposal that actually protects Americans more effectively. So that is the context, I think, today when we can...
Can I ask the Senator a question? Would he yield for a question?
Briefly.
So are you saying it protects Americans if we have a religious test on who comes into this country?
Well, I'll discuss that, Senator Leahy. I'm just saying that you proposed this resolution. You haven't proposed any resolution that fixes some of the problems I just mentioned. And it's time for us
Senator,
to do that.
may recall I had a bill before this committee, which the Senate voted, I think, 68 votes for it, that did protect Americans.
Rejected by the House and over my opposition. So the adoption of the Leahy Amendment would constitute a transformation of our thoughts about immigration. In effect, it's a move toward the ratification of the idea that global migration is a human right and a civil right for those of us in the United States, and that these immigrant rights must be supreme to the rights of nations, sovereign nations, to determine who can and cannot enter their borders. Fundamentally, foreign nationals living in foreign countries do not have a constitutional right to enter the United States. If they did, any alien denied entry could file suit to demand entry, claim damages for loss of employment, lost welfare benefits, or income if they believe they were improperly denied. Our immigration system derives exclusively from Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the United States Constitution, which vests the exclusive power in the Congress to establish a uniform system of immigration. Through acts of Congress, the United States can and does exclude aliens from entry into the United States for a whole number of reasons. These rules governing the selection of immigrants are by definition opposite the rules governing the treatment of citizens living or naturalized in the United States. There are 7 billion people in the world. Choosing who can immigrate into the United States is by definition an exclusionary process. The goal is to select immigrants for admission based on the benefits they provide to the society, based on skills, ages, values, philosophy, income, etc. Our goal is to choose for admission those likeliest to succeed and flourish, and crucially, to support the constitutional system of government and our values of pluralism and Republican constitutional governance. So whereas we consider it improper to deny employment to a U.S. citizen, say based on their age, we consider it necessary and important to consider immigrants according to their age and whether or not they will be able to contribute productive work to our American society. As stated by the Supreme Court, quote, whatever the procedure authorized by Congress is, it is due process as far as an alien denied entry is concerned. What this amendment would do would to turn this fundamental principle on its head, I fear, and to apply some of our core domestic legal constitutional protections to foreign nationals with no tie to the United States. The natural extension of this concept would fundamentally undermine entire provisions of immigration law, and the results quickly would become radical if this principle were to be adopted, not just on religion, but throughout the immigration system. In the United States, we have protections against discrimination by religion, age, disability, by country of origin. We have freedom of association, the rights of due process. Now imagine extending these as part of our immigration system. The logical extension of this concept results in a legal regime in which the United States cannot deny an alien admission to the United States based on age, health, skill, family, criminal history, country of origin, and so forth. If an elderly alien who needed 24-hour medical care applied for entry and was denied under this scheme of immigration rights, they could file a lawsuit, perhaps, demand entry and taxpayer funding. But let's consider the question of religion more carefully. It's so important. If we say it is improper to consider religion, even consider it, then that means it's improper for a consular official to even ask about a candidate's religious beliefs when trying to screen an applicant for entry. They do this regularly. It would mean that even asking questions of a fiancé seeking a visa about his or her views on any religious matter, say on the idea of pluralism versus religious supremacy, would be improper because it's improper to favor or disfavor a religion. It is improper, you could say, to favor or disfavor any interpretation of a religion, even if it is a perversion of a religion. It's still a religion to that person. Are we really prepared to disallow in the consideration of tens of millions of applications for entry to the United States any questions about religious views and attitudes? This amendment would mean, for instance, that the United States could not favor for entry, and maybe we don't want to do this. Could you favor for entry a moderate Muslim cleric over a radical Muslim cleric? We have huge unrest in the Middle East. We know that. It's unfortunate. It's a humanitarian disaster. And I wish we could do more about it and fix it now. But there's a strong argument to be made that we should focus on settling Muslim immigrants in the region, or maybe allow some immigration. But what about giving a priority to Yazidis or Christians who are subject to even greater persecution than normal? I have an Alabama Christian former Special Forces dentist who volunteered to go to Turkey to work in the camps to treat people, and he told me about this 8-year-old Yazidi girl, he was in tears telling about it, who'd lost 24 members of her family. She had one uncle and this girl still left because of their religion. Keep in mind, current refugee law requires us to consider persecution of a group on account of an individual's religion. This would ask us to discard or undermine that practice. A U.S.-born citizen who subscribes to theocratic Islam has a freedom of speech here that allows him to give a sermon and denounce the Constitution and ask for it to be changed. But under this amendment, a foreign religious leader living overseas could demand a tourist visa to deliver the same sermon and claim religious discrimination if not approved. I think it's a dangerous step. The next step, of course, if we say religion cannot be considered in any way, is to say we cannot consider history or geography or culture. We need to take a holistic decision about how we evaluate immigrants. We cannot labor under the illusion that these are simple binary decisions. It's not as though every applicant is either clearly tied to terrorists on the one hand or is absolutely safe on the other. Many people are radicalized after they enter. How do we screen for that possibility if we cannot even ask about a person's views on religion and what it means for them as they carry out that religious view in the years to come? Would we forbid questions about politics or theology from our consular officials? Furthermore, some of the same supporters of this very amendment supported the Lautenberg Amendment that gave special preferences for admission under our refugee program to Jews, evangelical Christians, Orthodox Christians, Baha'i, and religious minorities, all to the exclusion, obviously, of others. The import of this is that hundreds of thousands of individuals have been admitted to the United States based exclusively on their religion. For just reasons, I would think, normally. The rights have been neglected, that have been neglected by this Congress are the rights of the American people. We're not operating some kind of closed-door immigration policy. The opposite is true. No nation on earth has let in more people over a shorter period of time. We've admitted 59 million immigrants since 1965. We've admitted 1.5 million immigrants from Muslim countries since 9/11. We have the largest foreign-born population in our history as a raw number, and soon the largest proportion of non-native born in the history of the Republic. As a share of population, we will be breaking every historical record. Meanwhile, we have large companies exploiting programs to replace Americans with and undermine their wages. Poor screening has resulted in thousands of crimes against Americans. Our entitlement programs are stretched. Wages have been flattened for decades. Every year we admit another million permanent residents, nearly 100,000 refugees and asylees, and 700,000 foreign guest workers are here. Though it appears, I think we should have a conversation soon about how to help the tens of millions of Americans who are just scraping by. That's what we need to be thinking about. So Senator Leahy presents us a bold, dramatic sense of the Senate resolution that strikes at our heart and pulls at our values because we favor free exercise of religion. A serious discussion, colleagues, I believe is needed before we take this step. Certainly the point is pressed as a result of political statements, and I've tried to avoid commenting on those statements because I don't know how to firmly answer it. I don't know what the right response is, frankly. We need to be careful how we think about this. Certainly Jefferson and Madison spent years of contemplation and work on their founding of America's philosophies. So the resolution that's been offered highlights America's deep commitment to a free exercise of religion. We celebrate that. The question of religion and violent religious disagreements engendered in Europe prior to our founding were well known to the founding fathers. Jefferson and Madison had an answer. They felt in the Virginia Statutes of Religious Freedom. Jefferson was very proud of that. Put it on his tombstone, if I remember. Gary Wills, a great writer, not George Will, but Gary, the liberal person who writes on religious issues, writes insightfully about it in his book, Head and Heart, about how we got founded. We have to use our head and our heart. We do not allow a religious test for holding office. We allow free exercise of religion. We ban the establishment of a state-sponsored church. It's in the Constitution explicitly. Encompassed in the right of free exercise of religion is the duty to permit others to exercise their religion freely and not in some diminished state. But as with all rights, none can be absolute. I remember Federal Judge Virgil Pittman in Mobile agreeing to hear the petition of a prisoner who declared he was a bishop in the Church of the New Song and that its doctrines called for steak and wine every Friday night, and he demanded that the prison provide him that. The judge gave him a hearing. The judge wouldn't call him bishop, so he said, I'm not going to call you Judge Pittman. And that was the way the hearing went. But he got his hearing, and he lost his case. No person can declare they're religious. Religion allows the use of illegal drugs, nor to use violence to enforce its doctrines, nor physically abuse women, nor marry underage children, no matter how deeply held those views might be. But that's not the question here. It is well settled that applicants don't have a constitutional right or a civil right to demand entry into the United States. In fact, the INA has this provision. We have that provision. You have the provision. And it says this: whenever the president finds, this is our law today, whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interest of the United States, he may by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants, or impose on the entry of aliens any restrictions he deems appropriate. That's what the law is. I assume provisions like that are in the laws of every nation world over. So we accept those who we believe will advance our country's interests, and that's what secular states do. And we are a secular government. As leaders, we are to seek the advancement of the public interest. While billions of immigrants may benefit by moving to this country, we only have one responsibility. We must decide if such admission complies with our law and serves our national interest. Now, religion is highly respected in America. Jefferson and Madison believed one's relationship to God was a matter between the believer and God. It was not a matter to be dictated by the state. Jefferson's words chiseled in his monument reflect this unique American view. I swear eternal hostility over any domination of the mind of man. So we must respect our brothers and sisters across the globe who have different views about God, faith, and religion, even as we may disagree on religious matters. In America, we value free discussion as a method of reaching a higher truth, even changing our minds or another's minds in the course. And we don't believe someone should be killed if they change their mind. Wills said, as I remember, Washington and others at the time used the phrase toleration of other religious views, but he says Jefferson and Madison went further, giving more respect to dissenting and different views than toleration. So based on the Supreme Court interpretations of the Constitution, we can say with confidence that the establishment of an immigration policy has been given to Congress. Congress has not given rights to foreigners to go to court to demand entry into the United States. Neither does the Constitution. That's just plain fact. But in truth, Senator Leahy doesn't assert that the demands of his resolution are required by law or the Constitution. He insists that we must all agree that it is un-American to deny entry into America on account of one's religion. Un-American is a strong word. Liberals have never liked it used against their world visions. The communists certainly didn't like it used. To affirm such a resolution would mean that religion can never be taken into account to determine admissibility. Throughout all the ages, this great republic may exist in the years to come. I think we must apply a prudent cast of mind to our analysis. If there are circumstances we can foresee that would cause open-minded, logical, fair persons acting in the national interest to decide to act contrary to this resolution and be morally and legally justified in so doing, then it should not pass. We've conducted no analysis of this prospect. We haven't studied the ramifications of this. Unless we can be sure of that, we should not pass the resolution. Most religions focus on one's relationship to God, but many religions are much broader. Many of them, they may think a religion, I think, are strange and dangerous cults and criminal organizations. Many religions go broader than personal relationship with God. They include a belief in the ordering of government, what the laws should be, and what public policy should be. Religions today too often are underappreciated, I truly believe, for the good they do in marriage, in divorce, in death, in birth, in sickness, in health, in poverty, and in wealth. Religious faith for millions, billions on a daily basis. Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, world over, are a force for good. Reality would be denied, however, if we do not recognize that dangerous and damaging religions and sects have arisen in time. At least some points in history, most religions or segments of these religions have sought to overcome human laws and rules and impose doctrinal ideas that are contrary to good common sense and good policy. They even seek to destroy established governments because they perceive that God has ordered them to do so. So we may say they're not religions, but the adherents wouldn't say it's not a religion. They say they're adhering to their text, or their leader, or the revelation they have received. Don't the people of Jonestown, didn't they believe theirs was a religion, even as they took their own lives? Don't suicide bombers think they are religiously faithful? There are countless other examples that don't need to be listed now. What if a strong and growing religion believes their leader talks directly to God, that existing world governments are satanic and corrupt and must be violently overthrown? They insist the divine solution is a theocracy where God alone rules and rules justly. And now the time has come to challenge America and evangelize, I guess the word would be, America. Secretary Carter said ISIS is growing. What if it expands even more rapidly and decides to focus its believers on a long-term effort to change the corrupt America? And their doctrines justify force, do they not? Can we say ISIS's form of religion is not a religion just because it's not consistent with classical Islam? Why could they not demand as strong a right to enter as a peaceful, meditating Buddhist? Is the national interest to admit the ISIS member equally with the Buddhist? Is it wrong to say that immigration must serve the legitimate interests of America and that others more likely than those that others are more likely than those committed to violent ideologies? We can't admit everybody. Is it better to admit those who admire America, affirm its constitutional order, than those who would be unhappy, unfulfilled, until their vision for the country more closely parallels their religious vision, a government faithful to their theology, a theocracy? Again, sometimes religions believe that their goals go beyond personal salvation. They believe they are commanded to control the government, and their doctrines must dominate over other religions, denying them freedom. Such religious people would have an unhappy time in America. Well, the ideal suggested by Senator Leahy's resolution is valuable, and I think we all support that we should respect people's religion. And maybe our nation, to be true to its ideals, should follow the Leahy resolution firmly. Maybe it's correct. Maybe the common sense interest of our nation must fall to this rather extreme vision. But I don't think so. This is a dangerous injunction, colleagues. I don't think it goes beyond being unwise. It's a reckless resolution, I fear. It is absolute and without qualification. It could have pernicious impacts for decades, even centuries to come. It may be even a step from the concept of the nation state to some sort of global citizenship. Such understandings have never been part of immigration law in America. The resolution lacks limits. Let's not act quickly. Let's think this through. In a time of intense political debate, we don't need to be reacting, making political points. I think it's deeply about let's think deeply about what all this means and the ramifications of what it might be. Let's don't, so I urge a no vote on the resolution. And would, Mr. Chairman, I have a second degree amendment to the Leahy amendment, ALB 15F55. My amendment is number EAS 15D49. It would express the sense of the Senate that the individual right of the American people to keep and bear arms, as recognized by the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, as incorporated by the 14th Amendment to the states, and as interpreted by the Supreme Court in District of Columbia versus Heller and McDonald versus Chicago, is among those fundamental rights necessary to our political system of ordered liberty and deeply rooted in our nation's history and tradition, and such that any violation of this right would be contrary to the fundamental principles upon which the nation was founded. The right of all American people to keep and bear arms is one of the most clearly personal rights in the Constitution, while the First Amendment, which protects our freedom of speech and religion, talks about restricting Congress. The Supreme Court was right in District of Columbia v. Heller to recognize the Second Amendment is an individual right. The amendment also expressly concerned with the people protecting American rights, not others. Accordingly, Heller held the Second Amendment protects the individual rights to keep and bear arms unconnected to any service in any militia. And in 2010, the Supreme Court held that self-defense is a basic right and a central component to the Second Amendment.
I think it's an, yeah.
I'd offer the
Is this an,
remainder of my remarks for the record.
is this an amendment to the amendment?
It's an amendment.
It's an amendment to the amendment.
Second degree amendment.
But I've got three people that want to speak before we vote on the amendment to the amendment. Senator.
Let me just say, I regret talking so long on this subject, but I really think religion in America is extremely important, and we need to be very careful how we act on it.
Okay, in this order, Leahy, Feinstein, and then Durbin.
I was mesmerized by your long discussion. I'll tell the senator from Alabama. The bottom line, of course, is that he does not want to have even a sense of the Senate that we don't apply religious tests. I'm glad that there are people that felt the same way at the time my grandparents emigrated from Italy to the United States, who wanted to limit the people because they were Catholics. I'm glad that they were a minority at that time, or I assume I wouldn't be here. And probably the same thing when my great-great-grandparents, paternal grandparents in the early 1800s came to Vermont from Ireland. Second Amendment, if you're going to say that we agree with, or that the Supreme Court has declared what is settled law, I have no problem with that. But I worry if we send a message to the rest of the world that we base people's value based on their religion. As a Catholic, I don't, but I also don't want to see so many times in our history where we've put people in different categories based on their religion. It's wrong. It's wrong.
Senator Feinstein, Durbin, and then White House, and then I hope we can vote.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, a comment on Senator Sessions' amendment. I tried to listen closely to what he said. I have no objection to it as long as it recognizes what current law is only, and that is that the Supreme Court has recognized the Second Amendment does confer an individual right, and the court has clearly stated that that amendment is not unlimited. That's my understanding of it. I'd put the rest of my statement on that in the record, if I may, and I would like to say something about Senator Leahy's amendment. When I heard the leading candidate of the great Republican Party step up and say that he would ban one religion across the board for entry into this country, I felt like somebody had shot me in the gut, because everything that I believe about this great country is an antithesis of that. And if one of the major two parties is going to put this country in a position to violate the basic tenet on which it was founded, and that's separation of church and state, it's a whole different situation for the United States. It's one thing to be in the majority religiously. It's another thing to be in the minority religiously. And we've all seen prejudice and bias one way or another affect individual lives, sometimes our own. And so a persistent task of government on all levels has been to root out discrimination, to enact discrimination on a wholesale basis, castigating one of the great religions of the world and saying no one who happens to be a Muslim can come into this country. He has tried to backtrack. He has said, oh, I'm a great friend of Muslims. I'm the best friend Muslims will ever have. Well, that's just sheer hypocrisy. What Senator Leahy is doing here, and I recognize senses of the Senate to be what they are, but it is a statement that we return to our basic premise of this nation, and that we not bar individuals from entering the country based on their religion. It's simple, it's direct, it's not confused or complicated. And I really think we have a need to take this vote. For those who don't take it, you essentially say you align yourself with a policy that would discriminate against one religion. And I think that sets America in a terrible new path because it's precedent breaking. And you can't ignore what a leading candidate says, because he then has to carry through on commitments that he makes if he should succeed. So I know there'll be more said about it, but this is the first time we have an opportunity to say to this candidate, this is not what our nation stands for. It is the antithesis of everything we have fought to achieve. So I hope every member of this committee votes with great pride yes on the Leahy amendment.
Durbin, White House, and then Coons.
That's not.
And Mr. Chairman, let me tell you, being a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee is a singular honor. This committee of this United States Senate has really been in the front line, bearing witness to this great Constitution and the values of this country, and making certain that in our time we are defending those values. We've sworn to do that as members of the United States Senate. I listened to the comments made by Donald Trump, the leading candidate for president for the Republican nomination today. I listened to the poll numbers that suggest he is growing in popularity since he made this statement about those of the Muslim faith. And I find his statements to be disgusting, outrageous, and un-American. But in a way, I have a grudging gratitude that he is now forcing this national debate. It is time that we had this conversation openly. And when he took this extreme position, saying that he would exclude people of one religion from entering America, it really was a call to arms to everyone who believes in this Constitution. And I would say in defense of the Republican Party, many leading Republicans have stepped up to condemn what Donald Trump has said. House Speaker Paul Ryan said, "This is not conservatism. What was proposed yesterday is not what this party stands for, and more importantly, it's not what this country stands for." Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, with regards to remarks by one of the presidential candidates about restricting Muslim travel to the United States, let me just first say that would be completely inconsistent with American values. The list goes on. Dick Cheney, no one ever characterized him as a civil libertarian. Listen to what he said. "I think this whole notion that somehow we can just say no more Muslims, just ban a whole religion, goes against everything we stand for and believe in. I mean, religious freedom has been a very important part of our history and where we came from." Over and over, leaders in the Republican Party have said that what Donald Trump declared in the campaign was wrong and inconsistent with American values. The offering of the senator from Vermont to reaffirm the basic tenet, the basic American value, is appropriate and timely. The senator from Alabama is entitled to his opinions about civil liberties and freedom of religion. But most of us, in fact, the majority apparently of Republican leaders, believe that Donald Trump went too far, and what he said does not reflect the values of the United States. This Constitution that we've sworn to uphold and defend says only three things about religion. Each of us have an individual right to believe or not to believe. Secondly, the government cannot choose a state religion. And third, in Article 6, there shall be no religious test ever required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Those three basic principles have held us together when other nations have foundered with religious divisions. It is inconceivable to me that we would respect an American's right to choose the Muslim faith and then bar the entry of any member of their family from another country because they believe in the Muslim religion. Those two things are totally inconsistent. I support this amendment. It's been offered by the senator from Vermont. And I will say this about the senator from Alabama's offering. I'm going to view this as a simple restatement, as Senator Feinstein has said, of the settled law and court cases on the issue of the Second Amendment, where there is one provision in here that I find troubling, and that is the statement that any violation of this right would be contrary. I'm going to believe that that means that any illegal and unconstitutional variation on this right would be contrary. For example, the decision by the Supreme Court this week to allow the village of Highland Park, Illinois, not to take up the case, I should say, of the village of Highland Park, Illinois' ordinance, which prohibited firearms that held magazines and clips with more than 10 shells. I believe that that was the right decision and consistent with earlier decisions by the Supreme Court, and certainly no violation of Second Amendment rights. So in that regard, I think that the amendment offered by the senator from Alabama I will view as innocuous and merely restating the law, and I would regard the amendment offered by the senator from Vermont as timely, important, and a basic statement of whom we are as Americans.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I come to this conversation with a practical task today, which is to seek the approval of the Grassley-White House bill that would make the adjustments I discussed before to our statutes regarding biological, nuclear, and chemical terrorism. We have now embarked on conversation about two of the most hotly contested and divisive issues before the country. They are not going to be resolved in this committee. They're not going to be resolved on this vote. On my own, I would assuredly vote to support Chairman Leahy's amendments, and I would have some significant reservations about Senator Sessions' amendment. But again, I don't think we're going to resolve these great disputes here in this building today. What I do perceive is that if we pass the Sessions amendment and the Leahy amendment, then the Grassley White House bill is going no place fast, because it will have been completely overwhelmed by this larger conversation. And on our side, we'll probably lose virtually every vote over the Sessions amendment. And on the Republican side, we'll perhaps lose every vote on
I'll accept the Sessions amendment.
Perhaps, okay, very good then. And on the other side, we'll probably lose votes over the Leahy amendment. So I would be, I may be surprising some of my colleagues with my votes today, because I believe I have an obligation to my co-author to try to protect the bill going forward. I would hope that we can find a way to move this small, sensible piece of legislation forward without having to stop it in the service of these larger debates.
Mr. Chairman.
I got to call on Senator Coons first.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Oh, Senator Klobuchar. Say, I think maybe I better make something straight here. With or without the Sessions amendment, I'm going to vote for the Leahy amendment.
Then we're okay.
Maybe we haven't been communicating accurately.
As long as it's not an impediment to moving forward, then we'll be okay.
Okay.
All right.
Senator Klobuchar, and then
Well-
I assume Senator Coons.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I support Senator Whitehouse's bill. I support Senator Leahy's amendment. I also support Senator Sessions' restatement of the law. But I really appreciated the comments of my colleagues and Senator Durbin's mentioning of the Republican statements that have come out recently on this freedom of religion issue. I thought I never in my life would retweet Dick Cheney, but I did, to make the point that this is an American value, the freedom of religion. And I look at this very practically within my state. We have the biggest populations of Somalis in the country. They are nearly all refugees. They came to this country fleeing terror, fleeing violence in their own land. I have on my staff for the last 6 years a full-time Somali outreach person who has been extraordinary, Siad Ali. He was just recently elected to the Minneapolis School Board. He is very proud of that fact. I have met 4 years with our Somali community, and they are part of the fabric of life. We have over a dozen police officers in the city of Minneapolis who are Somali. We have a city councilman who is Somali. We have people running for the state legislature who are Somali. Most of them are Muslim. And I have seen the difficulties of this transition. I saw after 9/11 when the Bush U.S. Attorney, Tom Heffelfinger, and I had to go to the Muslim communities because they were scared. There were hate crimes. There were desecration of mosques. I have seen some of the recruiting that has gone on, much of it online, of this community, and we have been very aggressive of those cases in Minnesota. We have over a dozen cases now. We had 17 al-Shabaab indictments for people going to help al-Shabaab in Somalia. We just had another ISIS case yesterday. We had the first American, and the last name McCain, not Somalian, killed fighting with ISIS. So we have seen both sides of this coin. And what I have concluded from all of this is that my mission as prosecutor remains the same, and that is that you convict the guilty and protect the innocent, right? And in this case, this means going after the evil that's in our midst in our own country and the evil overseas, but it also means protecting the victims who are innocent, but also the innocent people who mean no harm. And that means so many of the law-abiding Muslims that are in our country today. In Minnesota, we see them every day. We see them at our workplace. My daughter went to school with what was, I think, a majority Muslim school. She was in a public school in Minneapolis. All of her little photos of her fourth grade, her sixth grade class show her very short with these tall Muslim girls. The most common name in her class was Adirazak. So I have lived this personally in my life. And the thought that someone, a major candidate for a major party, would say that a person of a certain faith is not worthy to visit our country is wrong. I have been very supportive of all of the security measures with the visa waiver program. I have been very supportive of all of the security measures, from the need to change the encryption problem to the need to do more when it comes to cybersecurity, sharing information. But I will not stand by if someone makes this public declaration that refugees are the problem or that we should discriminate against a certain religion in this country. So I appreciate that Senator Leahy has raised this amendment and that we've had this discussion. Thank you.
Senator Coons, I know I was going to call on you next. Senator Feinstein has to go, and if you were going to be the last speaker, we could vote and we still have a quorum. Otherwise, we lose our quorum, and I doubt if we'll get a quorum. Would you let us do that, please?
Certainly.
Could we vote on the, okay, Senator, those in favor,
Could I just say
have a roll
one
call.
brief? Yes, but could I have briefly one additional comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd accept Senator Sessions' amendment by consent if you want to, but I want a roll call on mine.
I think I like a roll call on both. My amendment, so I would ask for that. And we just note, there's nothing in the Leahy amendment that mentioned Islam or Trump. It is a broad, historic statement of policy that goes beyond what we've done before, misunderstands the situation, and let's say we have a situation where the Klan makes itself somehow into a religion, and we can't consider their hateful ideas when they apply for admission to America. So this is goes beyond where we ought to be going. It has impacts for years to come. I think it's a principle that's too broadly stated, and we shouldn't allow frustration over political statements to create a resolution that's unwise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
call the roll on the amendment to the amendment by Senator Sessions?
Mr. Hatch.
I'm sorry, what?
Mr. Sessions.
By
Aye.
proxy. Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Cruz.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Flake.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Vitter.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Perdue.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Tillis. Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Schumer.
Aye
Aye by proxy.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it.
That's all right.
For the
Mr.
Democrats.
Durbin.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr.
Wait a minute, we're going to vote on the second one. Aye by proxy.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, the votes are 20 yeas, no nays.
Now a roll call vote on the Leahy amendment as amended by the Session amendment. Call the roll.
Mr. Hatch.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Sessions?
No.
Mr. Graham?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Lee? Mr. Cruz?
No by proxy.
Mr. Flake?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Vitter?
No by proxy.
Mr. Perdue?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Tillis? Mr. Leahy?
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein? Aye. Mr. Schumer?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Durbin?
Aye.
Mrs. Whitehouse?
Aye.
Mrs. Klobuchar? Aye. Mr. Franken?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal?
Aye by proxy. I mean, aye. Grassley, aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, the votes is 16 yeas, 4 nays.
Okay, the Leahy amendment's adopted. It'll be now on the final passage of the bill. Can we voice vote the bill on final passage?
No.
Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Hatch?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Sessions?
No.
Mr. Graham?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Lee? Mr. Cruz?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Flake?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Vitter?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Perdue?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Tillis? Mr. Leahy?
No, because of the death penalty provision.
Mrs. Feinstein? Aye. Mr. Schumer?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Durbin?
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse?
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar? Aye. Mr. Franken?
No by proxy.
Mr. Coons?
Okay.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, the votes are 17 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay, the bill is reported. Now, can we have the nominees?
En banc?
Monty for Eastern District, Virginia.